So let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So I've been incredibly blessed to be included in this tremendous, really, really spectacular board game group that is running Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, and with multiple expansions. I have never seen a game like this. I really think Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Heroes Grid is a game that has secreted tabletop role-playing games, hidden it, and served it to board gamers. I think it is a tabletop role-playing game in disguise, right? And one of the reasons why this is like the last time I played, the guy who actually the host, right? He's like, I'm gonna do cool voices for the figures, right? I like that's some Dungeon Master action there, right? And I've really been enjoying it, but I've been learning a lot about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the reason why I've been taking the time to learn about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is it is a sister product to Dungeons and Dragons, and it is quite literally highly involved in the past, present, and future of Dungeons and Dragons. So Hasbro is the guardian of Dungeons and Dragons. They bought Dungeons and Dragons for $325 million. They then bought Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for $522 million. So what I wanted to talk about right now are the multiple owners of the actual show, right? So I did not know this. It started on Fox, and then it went to Disney, and then it went to Nickelodeon, and then it went to Netflix. And that is simply the show, right? But one of the things but because Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has the same guardian as Dungeons and Dragons, it has the same intellectual property journey, right? And one of the things that Dungeons and Dragons has figured out that no other, actually, Paizo is the only other organization that has figured this out for tabletop role-playing games, and that is mixed canon, right? So where does canon come from for Dungeons and Dragons? Canon comes from Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons canon comes from Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons canon comes from Funko Pop. Dungeons and Dragons canon comes from Magic the Gathering. Dungeons and Dragons canon comes from Yahtzee. Dungeons and Dragons canon comes from Legos, right? It comes from many, many, many sources, right? And it's the same with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has canon that comes from the television show, and canon that comes from video games, and canon that comes from what was the other one? From the toys, and canon that comes specifically from comic books, right? Mixed canon. It's incredible, right? Its canon also spans, and then in addition to what the owners of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers have acknowledged for canon, the community has then additionally connected canon all the way back to Super Sentai, which is the material that came. And actually, Super Sentai is literally in the canon, even in the American Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So the reality is, Dungeons and Dragons is a powerful catalyst, right? And I'm convinced that Dungeons and Dragons is farthest out. It is, so when it comes to intellectual property, right, management and expansion, Dungeons and Dragons is the only spacefaring product, right? Every other intellectual property on the planet is still on the planet, right? Like, and that's the point, is Dungeons and Dragons is decades ahead of any other intellectual property in the world, to the point where the complexity on Dungeons and Dragons canon is so high. I'm convinced, me and probably 5 other people on this planet actually understand it, right? Because it spans time, it spans medium, it spans material, it spans continents, it is amazing, and it is outrageously complex. And there are already books being written about the history of Dungeons and Dragons. We don't have academic discourses on the canon of Dungeons and Dragons yet, but we will, right? And frankly, I'm not sure we even need it. We have people discussing it right here on YouTube. which that's a whole subject on my own. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments, which is content, and send your traffic. Please consider like, subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.